It's very healthy what silver is doing, even from the technical point of view. So I'm confident with silver because clearly all the setbacks in gold and silver, and it's showing that very important strength, increasing strength in the levels, and that they give us the idea that we are in a bullish trend for the long-term bullish trend for gold and silver.
Hello and welcome. I appreciate you tuning in today. Today we are joined by Algo Moneyfest. He is your Argentinian YouTube friend. Algo is a trader that's active on X and YouTube, where he shares his insights on the banking system, as well as crypto and the gold and silver markets. As always, it's an honor to have Oren Elbaz here today. He is a sound money advocate and economist hailing from Israel. I'll leave links to their X and YouTube accounts in the description. Gentlemen, welcome. It's great to speak with both of you today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for having us. And as always, it's a pleasure talking to you.
You bet. It's an honor to speak with both of you this morning. So, Algo, we'll start out by asking you some questions about Argentina. What was it like experiencing the inflation in Argentina firsthand? How is it reflected in the day-to-day lives of people down there? And how has it affected Argentinian society?
Well, the thing is that we tell the whole story. First, we get used to 15% inflation, then 30, then 14, then 50% inflation, and finally 200% inflation. We had experience with hyperinflation in 1989 with one of the highest hyperinflation moments that was under the Alfonsine presidency. The inflation numbers were extremely high. This alters the life of the people where money flies away very quickly as soon as it enters your bank account. It changed the saving patterns of the people. People tends to not save enough money. Sometimes people use US dollar as the main asset, even for very, very low savings, the US dollar. Argentinians don't think about the American inflation. It's like it's non-existent for the common people, even though it's there with 4, 5, 6, or even higher inflation. It just doesn't exist for the normal people and those who are much more savvy things in terms of gold, silver, or maybe more real assets like stocks. The big problem with this increasing trend in inflation in the long term is that we went from 10% levels in the poverty rate up to 50%. Now, 50% of the population here in Argentina is considered poor. That's thanks to devaluation, inflation, not some money system that brought down half of the people, brought the people to poverty. That's why I'm interested in sound money, and I'm fully a member of the community since a very long time.
That's very interesting. So, a lot of people down there will actually hold US dollars.
Yes, Argentina is considered one of the countries with the highest level of US dollar cash in the world, according to the Federal Reserve numbers. Related to the people who is saving money, there is a lot of money is considered, and there is about 200 billion US dollar in cash hidden in foreign accounts, escaped out of the Argentina banking system. So we have lots of monetary problems, hyperinflation, bank runs, bank meltdowns, the highest inflation of Earth last year, and also the most complex tax system of the world, according to statistics in 2015. So this created a very hostile environment. Argentina still use US dollars for real estate transactions or for current savings. And Argentina Argentinian people is not used to gold and silver here. It's like a very minority here who is used to buy gold and silver as regular. So it's a financial education issue here for Argentinians, U.S. dollar. The idea of inflation in US dollar is really not visible, and it's a secret and hidden confiscation in slow motion there.
I wanted to ask because we have the experience of other countries who experienced very high inflation, and we saw that it has not only a detrimental effect on the economics of those countries, but also on the very nature of the people who are become, you know, centered on the present and do not think of the future because saving is not worthwhile. And I was, you know, I'm also interested, and I'm also studying the moral aspects of inflation. Can you say that inflation had an impact on the nature of the people in Argentina? Would it be true to say such a thing?
Yes, there is a moral lessons behind the irresponsible monetary and money printing issue. The thing that money printing brings the possibility of solving or the illusion of solving problems, and that creates a lot of power, the possibility of printing money from a discretionary point of view. So this money printing opens the possibility of socialism and social programs, because with money printing you can go and rescue parts of the economy that are not working. So this helps the idea of interventions in the market, assisting with fiscal stimulus that, according to some policies, are backed by the possibility of money printing for my cell phone. So this was the campaign of Javier Milei ending and closing the Central Bank of Argentina. And I know very well his campaign because I was a bit involved in politics some years ago. I know what happened from behind the scenes. The idea of money printing brings the illusion that you can solve almost any problem for politicians with money printing. And at the end, this creates a wealth distortion that ends badly, always ends badly with creating a wealth distortion with the directed fiscal stimulus. The problem with money print is that once you print so much money, you start to recover that money, and this bring you higher taxes. So it creates a vicious cycle that affects business, and you start going down, and poverty starts going up. That's what happens with money printing. That's one of the moral lessons here, is that you end bad once you go that way.
Well, we can all learn a lesson from what we see going on in Argentina right now, and I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that. Now, did I hear that correct, that the real estate transactions are conducted in US dollars? Is that 100% of the time, or just a
Yes,
large?
it's 100% of the time. From decades, all the Argentinian transactions are made in US dollars. But this is not the only country. Other countries who suffer from high inflation, like in Hungary or Vietnam, they use gold for real estate transactions. In the years of the Cold War, there are some countries that use US dollar, because imagine that you are making a real estate transaction, and here it's normal to have a 10% devaluation in 1 week or in 1 day. That's a normal thing in bad times. So losing 10% of the value of your house is a risk no one's, even the people who has no really high savings, they can accept to lose 10% of a house. So all the transactions are made in US dollars. And there was a very few moments between 1990 and 2000 when we have a exchange rate of 1-to-1 against the US dollar. That was a famous times. It was considered the stable moments in the that was the only moment that we have a 1-to-1 ratio with the US dollar, 1 peso, $1 for 10 years, and then everything blew up in the banking system because we took so much debt in foreign currency. We got used to US long-term US dollar nominated debt, and everything blew up. The entire system blew up. It was the
I
2001
I
crisis.
understand that the Argentinian peso is not free floating, that it is a
Yes, of
fixed
course. It's not floating.
exchange rate.
If you come to Argentina, we have multiple exchange, and according where you go, you get a different exchange rate. So it's very important for tourists to know what is happening here because it's a different world. It's a different planet. We have a currency exchange that's the official price, which is around 2,000 pesos for $1, and then you have the real price, which is 20% higher than that, and you have the credit card foreign exchange rate. Is use your credit card, you get a different impact if you use or credit card for buying foreign fees that is 50% higher. There are lots. There is a way Argentinians get access to a cheap US dollar, buying bonds in pesos and selling those like an arbitrage thing to get the implicit exchange rate. To say it easily is Argentinians, if they want to buy US dollars, they go to the stock market and they buy Argentinian bonds quoting in US dollar, Argentinian bonds in pesos and change them for the same bonds quoting in US dollars, and they get the exchange rate that's implied in that transaction. So they get legally US dollar because here we can buy more than $200 per month. There is capital control here. So if I get my salary, my income, I can buy more than 200 USD per month. Sometimes zero, according to the slogan system. So there is capital controls here established since a long time, 12 years ago, I think that's. So we can't even buy US dollars legally, easily. So we have to move and make some transactions. The previous government was chasing people who were buying in the black market in downtown, chasing people with dogs that were sniffing for US dollars.
Wow.
Yeah. The local IRS, like the Internal Revenue Service from Argentina, deployed a canine division to scan for people buying US dollars, bills. That's what happened the previous administration. Were chasing criminals. The people wanted to escape from the currency that was crashing. That was happening in Argentina in the previous government, chasing people with dogs for US dollar. That's insane.
Just for comparison, what is the average salary in Argentina nowadays in dollars?
I think I don't know the exact name, but the average salary is around 1,000 USD, around 1,000 USD or one half one 2,000. Say yes, between I think it's around 1.5 thousand USD. I could check that, but I don't know the exact number. It's around that. We crashed a lot from that level, all the way down to the minimum salary that went up to 180 USD, the minimum average. The minimum salary here, minimum income was as low as 200 USD in the worst moment. So we went down. That was I don't know if you mean the mean average or the minimum wage. I think I didn't get that.
Hey,
But
no sweat. And is that per month? Is that
yes,
correct?
per month, yes.
And then before we get too far into it, somebody's birthday is today. Did you want to give a shout out?
Yes, and today is my mom's birthday. So I say, hi, mom, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday.
So that's really interesting. Um, so they capped the amount of US dollars someone could get at 200 per month. And they were literally chasing people around with dogs that were trained to sniff out US dollars down in Argentina. So that's really interesting. I'd never heard about that before. Thanks a lot for sharing that. So
Yeah, Brian, imagine that you are trapped in in a monetary system that it gets self-destroyed, and at the same time you can escape legally. And they go
Now,
and chase you with dogs if you want to escape.
yes.
So people,
Are there any restrictions on the purchase of gold and silver coin?
there was a restriction uh, that was the government overnight banned the gold sales at the banks. There were a few banks that were selling gold bars in Argentina. Three banks actually. One was the Bank of Buenos Aires, the city of Buenos Aires, and the other banks were two banks. So when the country went to capital controls like we have now, since there, gold sales were banned for a few. So there were no bids for the gold bars in downtown Buenos Aires. It was a mess. That created a lot of problems with the gold bars liquidity because there were two business here in Argentina: the import of Swiss gold bars, the numismatic business, the local coin shops and very few people there, and some silver, but very, very low because all gold and silver gets exported, goes overseas. There is no refining here, and not much gold and silver stays in the country. And we have a surplus of gold for the local uses and industry and jewelry business here. So there is surplus of gold here. And sometimes gold is lower than the gold spot in the gold international price, lower than the international price for gold here in Buenos Aires, maybe 4 or 5%, 2 4 5%. And the business here of the gold and silver market here is very, very tiny. There is not really much people here buying gold and silver like developed countries like Germany, Dubai, USA. There is not real gold and silver market like other countries. So it's a thing of financial education here and our tradition of being very linked with other foreign partners. And we use US dollar as a tradition here from decades. And it's very deep in the mind of the people, even though USA has important inflation, is non-existent for the normal people.
I see, yeah,
Simply
comparatively.
because on a relative basis, the Argentinian inflation is much higher than the inflation in the US, so it's negligible in comparison.
Yes, it's natural in comparison, yes.
That is interesting. So oftentimes the gold spot price there, it sounds like will be about 4 to 5% lower than like what it would be here. What are the taxes like there on gold? Is it the same as silver? Do you guys have a pretty hefty like a value added tax
There
on
is
there?
a value added tax of 21%, which is very high. It's very similar to the Spain levels. You have very important levels of taxation for jewelry because are considered luxury tax, which is extremely high, 50%. So all the transactions here in the jewelry business are made in the black market. Yeah, I have contact, and they all make their transactions in the black market to avoid this heavy taxation here in the gold and silver market and the local jewel market also. So all the transactions are made downtown in the black market.
50% value added tax on jewelry is a
Yes,
brutal
I think
tax
it's
rate.
it's a luxury tax. It's
From,
very
from
high.
what you're describing, it seems that there's very, very little economic freedom in Argentina.
Well,
Is it
absolutely, there is.
is it something which generates resentment? Do people talk about it? Did people talk about it even before Milei came to power?
It was increasing the resentment was low, a thing that was increasing low, very, very slowly in the last as a trend. There is also the possibility of too much poverty that wants to keep the social programs status quo, and they fix to that. So there is fighting between pro-business people who want freedom, economic freedom, and those who want the money printing and the social programs. And there's two factions of the society fighting and keeping some status quo, some equilibrium or balance between what the people really want, until the level of poverty and the level of bureaucracy and the level of problems with the business and the higher and higher inflation started to change the status quo, and that brought an opportunity to the Milei administration to enter the government and promoting the complete closure of the central bank as one of his main campaign promises, the complete closure of the central bank. I even had contacts in the Argentinian central bank, the employees there that were scared of Milei closing completely the central bank. Of course, he cannot close the central bank because there are international regulations, like with the United States, FATCA, that you have to report all the transactions of money, international money laundering, regulation that can allow you to keep a central bank closed, because the central bank is a normal entity that would help for the for the for the you understand, following those regulations for and avoiding being a pariah state. But that was his main campaign, his main politics campaign, and that's why he won, because people were tired of the Argentinian peso losing the money, their savings. And we are here following all the trends. We are starting to get worried about even the US dollar future with the coming elections and the possibility of a war, a higher risk of war here in the United States. People start talking about the risk of war, the problems with the massive money printing in the United States. There is a slow waking up of the people to the problems of the US dollar, but the US dollar still is the main currency for savings here.
Now, I understand that when Javier Milei came to power, he started by slashing government spending. And I would expect that this would fight indeed lower inflation, but also temporarily induce a recession due to all the people who were reliant on government subsidies and transfer payments. Are you experiencing right now a recession in Argentina?
There is a lower economic activity, yes, and there has been also a lower monthly inflation. We went from 20% inflation back last year, and it went down around the levels of 4% inflation per month. That's a financial miracle in my point of view. But there is some resentment because the people was expecting fiscal cuts only for politicians, and there has been some adjustments in the levels of retirees' real income for retirees, and it was adjusted, and that created a lot of resentment. Also, there are cuts in the universities' public funding. There was a march. The government is managing a soft landing, but there is it's a slower economic activity, but there is not a big recession so far.
What is the situation of the unemployment right now?
The unemployment levels are stable. There is no massive increase in unemployment. There is no talk about unemployment here. There is no really impact in the levels of employment. So this is not a question here. The big question here is the monetary debt, the government debt rollovers, the problem with the inflation, and the retirees levels are very upset with the real terms cut, around 10 or 15% cut in the real terms. And the issue is that the government is considered that we are having a success with the 80%. At the same time, there are coming a lot of deregulations. They are deregulating the economy and creating more freedom for lots of activity. So there's some recoveries in some specific parts. There is a bounce in the levels of real estate transactions at 20% in 9 months, which is very high, because there were lots of problems in the real estate transactions, especially with the problems with savings, with the problem of sending money. And there is a very important recovery in the real estate transactions of around 20%, as I said. The government is also promoting which we call a blanqueo, which is the possibility of bringing capital and disclose that capital, even and pay taxes for entering money to the system with a fee, so you can bring undisclosed money to the system. I don't think if you don't understand what it means of bringing money or what is a blanqueo, but it's the government allow people to bring undisclosed money to the system for a fee.
If I understand correctly, they are like forgiving them for not disclosing
showing. Yes, that's what's bringing. The number is $1 billion. The number that $1 billion. That's a lot for here. And the levels of savings in US dollars in the banking system is increasing now, and that's showing some confidence that's coming back to the banking system as soon as the levels of inflation started going down 80% in monthly terms.
Last question in this topic.
Yes.
What percentage of this, what you call economic miracle, would you attribute to the hope which is associated with the rise of Javier Milei, and how much of it is, down to earth, real economic change? The reason I'm asking, because, hope tends to fade over time, but true economic reforms, they stay and you can build upon them.
Well, there is something clear. Milei has an economics minister who is a former JP Morgan executive. He was he's considered one of the most important bond traders of the country. And one of the main problems of Argentina was their bonds level, and how to reschedule all the payments. So Javier Milei put in place a JP Morgan executive who compared him with Messi, with the soccer player, the famous, as a great manager for its debt, for the Argentinian debt. So they managed to solve all the bond payments of this year quite calmly, and that decreased the level of stress in the system. That's the main issue here, because Argentina is one step of blowing away, in one step ahead if you don't pay the bonds. And that was the main issue for 2025. How do we? So they are avoided default situation. They avoided default situation and rescheduled the bonds. They made talks with the IMF, and they were considered successful. How they push the debt away and push the way down the road, so to speak. So that's what
there was
the main
restructuring.
Success.
So I understand that there was some restructuring of the debt.
Yes, he not only he rescheduled the debt successfully and pushed and we could say he kicked the can down the road, as Americans could say. That could be correct. But they also closed a lot of ministries. They closed a lot of government departments, and create what they call the superavit in terms of fiscal superavit. Like they balance the spending from the government, and that's what's the
Yes.
main success, short-term success.
Yes,
That's
there is now, instead of a deficit, there is a surplus.
There's a surplus, but it's considered a risky surplus because it's based on the reschedule of some debts in financial terms. So if you schedule your debt, you are temporary in a surplus in your levels of spending. That's what's happening here. And that's the main success. A bit of austerity, confidence in the government, and rescheduling the debt. That's a temporary success, and that it was enough to bring the inflation from 20% to 4% in monthly terms.
So is that sustainable? Do you think that he's headed in the right direction?
I believe so. I believe that's better than all the other alternatives, like keep spending with increasing levels of spending against GDP. It was first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6%, even higher levels of spending to GDP levels. And that was clearly unsustainable. That brought the highest inflation of the world.
So it is good to hear that you're saying it's about 4%. I had read a Reuters article saying that it was expected to be about 3.5% this month, which is the lowest monthly rate since 2021. So it sounds like there is a large degree of accuracy in what they're reporting. And they're expecting that this year it's going to be about 123%, down from 230%, based on what I had read. What have Argentinians been doing to deal with this inflation, just on their day-to-day lives? Have they been like gardening more? Or I know that you had talked about people saving in US dollars. What would you say has been the most effective way people have protected themselves from this inflation that you guys experienced?
Well, the most savvy, I mean, some people were investing in inflation adjusting fixed term deposits, that inflation adjusted deposits that were real success this year, because it was high inflation, but the level of the exchange rate was stable and going down. So it was a huge success keeping your money in the banking system with inflation adjusted deposits, what we call UVA deposits, because it's a value that was adjusted by inflation. And people also buy US stocks in pesos. That's this instrument, the vehicle that we have here, that you can buy what's called CDRs, and you can buy US stocks, tech stocks in the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange, but quoting in local pesos. So people use that for savings. You can buy NVIDIA in Argentinian pesos here in the stock market with no limits of the $200 limits per month at buying the US dollar and depositing the account. Some buy the black market, they use Tether, cryptocurrency stablecoin, Tether, for moving the money. The black market use crypto as a normal tool, as an additional tool for the black market transactions. They use Tether in the Tron, mostly in the Tron protocol, because the fastest way. Not so many people buy gold and silver. It's a very, very tiny part of the population, but very few people is used to buy gold and silver. So the main things are stocks, bonds. Argentinian bonds were as low as 30% of its real value, and they had a recovery up to 60% in the last year. So a lot of people were buying Argentinian bonds in USD as a way of escaping from the peso, because there was no limit of buying local debt that looks like a contradiction, but a lot of people were buying Argentinian bonds in USD, buy US stocks, inflation adjusted deposits as one of the main vehicles for protecting themselves against inflation.
I see. That's interesting. So with these inflation adjusted deposits, I mean, is this outpacing the actual inflation, or is it just a hedge, just softening the burden, so to speak?
It was a really good hedge because people compare the returns against the returns of the peso compared to the USD. But the problem with Argentina, and it's very important, is that the government was caught faking the inflation numbers years ago. So that created a lot of problem because they fired some inflation statisticians of the government, and it was mess, and there was some lawsuits because they were not respecting the real levels of inflation. So there was a complete mess here when that happened in Argentina. Even for the accountants, they had to adjust the numbers by inflation. They had to use other districts, city inflation numbers from other cities because the national inflation number was considered toxic. So that created a lot of problems. Imagine that you are escaping from your country inflation, and you go for inflation adjusting vehicles, and then your government fakes the numbers, and you find out that could create a pretty lot of problem, and that's exactly what happened in Argentina too. So there are a lot of
I
lessons.
must point out that what you're describing is absolutely classic. I mean, there is
It's
no
classic,
government
yes.
out there which doesn't want to downplay the level of inflation. It doesn't want to portray better numbers than in reality. And this is one of the reasons why inflation adjusted bonds are usually do not really protect their owners from inflation. This is what we know all across the world. So I think Argentina is no different.
Absolutely, and there is a risk of that happened, but now I think we learned that lessons, that keeping good statistics are very important, because what's the first thing that happens when you fake the inflation numbers? You are hiding the levels of poverty in a country. That's the first thing that happens, when you are hiding the real levels of poverty.
Another thing that you do is you artificially inflate the rate of growth.
Absolutely, yes.
Would you not agree? Because understated inflation masquerades as growth.
Absolutely, in real terms, of course. So I don't know if you want to go to other topics, but this is very important, is to mention that inflation adjusted vehicles are interesting, but also carries some risks that it must be considered.
I wanted to ask you, since I've heard that Argentina is blessed with many natural resources. Apart from agriculture, you also have deposits of gold, silver, potentially copper, and also lithium. I understand that you are a major producer of lithium. Would you care
Yes,
to tell us a bit about that?
yeah, Argentina is one of main the main countries with the highest levels of gas in the world. Also, one of the country with the highest levels of lithium in the world. In the north, copper deposits, gold, silver deposits, what is in the Andes region, the west of the country. Um, the fascinating thing is that we found lots of crude oil. One of the main world crude oil reserves, what we call vaca muerta, that would mean dead cow. That's a very area that will transform Argentina in a crude oil exporter country. And the issue is that the problems with the historical problem is that we were not exploiting correctly all these resources, and we have energetic crisis. With lots of times we had energetic crisis. There will be energetic crisis again this summer. That's the problem with inflation, that the lack of strategic investment in the energy sector in Argentina is one of the big problems, that you need long-term consistency and fiscal discipline. So the long-term investments in the energy sector appeared. And now what this government is doing, the Milei administration, is giving fiscal stimulus. I mean, a clear tax system for foreign investments, and direct the foreign investments to the exploration of the mining operations and the energy sector mostly, to recover that with very low levels of taxation. And that's the main issue here, what we call the regime. There is a lot of excitement. There is a man who covers that on X, which is Jordan, who is a Australian geologist. He covers that on X, the benefits that are and the stimulus that are happening for having a beneficial tax system for the foreign investments in minerals or crude oil. Yes, Argentina is very blessed with lots of resources, but if you don't have the fiscal discipline, a clear financial system, and a clear tax system, and too much and clear some money system, then the long-term investment won't show up.
Well, I had a quick question about refining down there. So they don't do any refining of gold or silver in Argentina. Is that correct? Did I hear that right?
Yes, we export what's called correct me if I'm wrong, the exact word is doré. It means the gold, the gold, or it gets exported, and there is not much refining here in Argentina. Because there is also most of the gold and silver goes out of the country. There is not much real activity here locally. There is also activity of recycling gold and silver here, but the demand is very low here for the jewelry sector, very low, and the gold bar and silver demand is really, really low.
I see. So this is more just because it wouldn't be profitable for them, as
Yes.
opposed to regulations or something like that.
Yes, of course. And also you can send dividends overseas because of the problems with capital controls. So if you can send money overseas, there will be no foreign investments. That's what they are trying to fix now, because we are still suffering from capital controls.
Interesting. And then I had a quick one more question about Argentina, and then you personally, with your own gold and silver, were you able to use it to your advantage at all during the inflation that you guys were experiencing?
Yes, I bought silver coins at the Argentinian central bank as a way of get off the grid money. That was the idea of getting off the grid money out of the US banking system, out of the Argentinian banking system. So I got some Argentinian silver coins. I put them on a drawer. I saved that close. I hide those coins. I kept my store those coins. I forgot about them. And 10 years later, it went up 300% in USD, thanks to its numismatic value, not because I was smart with that decision. Some of those coins. The problem with Argentina being a silver ape, as we say in the community, is that there is no liquidity here. If you need cash and you go to the local coin shops that are there, the famous Corrientes Avenue, you get a between 50-60% discount for your silver coins. There is no real silver liquidity here. And the local coin shops will buy you on spot, but with massive discounts. So you have to be very long-term.
You can't find other private people who will buy them at spot?
Yes, you can find that they will take between 1 month up to 90 days to sell one coin. That's the market here. You get 30 days or 90 days to sell one coin, and you get a 10% fee on the market, the e-market. We used here Mercado Libre, Meli, like Amazon or eBay. Here it's called Mercado Libre. In Latin America, it's called Mercado. And they take 10% of your coins just for
Wow.
buying and selling that. That's a lot. So this is very difficult market here for silver apes like us.
I see that. That is interesting. Well, thanks for the information on that. So it does sound like what you did was the best thing to do, which is throw it in a box, forget about it, and
Yes.
just let it adjust with inflation for years on end. And that's when you'll really get the most bang for your buck. And that's probably true anywhere. That's really when you're gonna get the most out of it. Just throw it in a box and forget about it, folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now we'll move on to another subject, and what we're going to talk about is the dollar, not being held as much in reserves. Do you think that the globe reducing its dollar reserves might accelerate when the dollar drops under 50% of the global reserves? Do you think there might be a psychological impact with that?
I'm not particularly sure about the monetary levels or the number levels that you are mentioning. That there is trend, clear trend. The moment I started following gold and silver, there was just that a financial crisis that was in 2008. We were expecting more problem for the US dollar, but it recovered. And then it started to go down. And one important thing happened, the idea of the BRICS and the idea of multilateral monetary system. That's the most important thing. That's the most important evidence that there is some problems with the one world currency system. And then now you have the problem that we are seeing that USA is fighting or facing or entering a more competitive uh, stage with Russia, or even funding a war through Ukraine. And that's creating some sort of alliance between Russia and China and creating new monetary systems like a parallel SWIFT system. And there are more evidence that increasing risk of a multilateral war in terms of monetary systems. The idea that China is buying gold secretly or not so secretly and backing the yuan and being more and more open and allowing the use of the yuan overseas, it clearly shows that China is playing a game there too. I don't know if you know, but Argentina has yuans in the central bank because China is financing our exports and imports, giving us loans in Chinese yuans. So we are slowly being tied monetary and commercially with China. And that is what's happening with lots of countries, slowly but steady. China is using the yuan as a tool to create links with multiple countries. So now they are linking their economy with us. Uh, in, that's creating a link with the yuan, and the yuan is very close to entering our financial system. I think in a few years we may start giving loans in yuans if China keeps. So China is I think is the main competitor for the US dollar, but they are very far away so far because they need a lot of economic regulations, improvements. They are far away for competing directly with the US dollar, but there are clear evidence that the US dollar has competitors that are making their strategic moves to capture some part of the international share of the currency system.
That's
I
interesting.
want to give a bit of background for the sake of our listeners regarding the role of the dollar as the global reserve currency and whether it will be able to maintain this role in future years. Well, there is a great debate being carried out in the financial community regarding the future of the dollar. There are those who believe that due to the mismanagement of the dollar, of the American economy, by the Federal Reserve, by the federal government. The dollar is in decline and will eventually lose its position. And there are those who, on the other hand, who argue that the dollar will maintain its position because there are all sorts of mechanisms in place which keep it strong compared to other fiat currencies, which keep it as the global reserve currency. Those guys, we can put them under the umbrella of what is called the milkshake theory. This is something which has been popularized by an analyst called Brent Johnson. He's very vocal about the fact that many countries and corporations across the world own dollar-denominated debt, and he argues that this dollar-denominated debt is like tethering them to the dollar, not allowing them to de-dollarize. He also argues that the BRICS nations will not be able to de-dollarize, that their efforts will be in vain. Now, of course, it's a very heated debate. Now, I personally, I'm on the side that the dollar will eventually lose its position. I can see a scenario in which temporarily it does grow stronger compared to other fiat currencies, such as the euro, as the pound, even, other fiat currencies. But I think the purchasing power of the dollar of all fiat currencies is what is truly important. I think that all fiat currencies can collapse together. It doesn't matter which one of them is the strongest. If they all collapse compared to tangible goods, to commodities. And I think in the grand scheme of things, it won't really change if the dollar continues to be the strongest while they all collapse. And this is why I'm focused on the commodity sector. And I'm less bothered by the question whether the dollar will collapse or not compared to other currencies.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that.
Brian, I want to say something to add to the Oren's position, is that if you check the central bank's books, you will see that they have US dollar on all the other guys' currencies, fiat currencies. So they all have the same currencies between each other, between the central banks. You have bonds and you have USD or euros, and they are all tied together because one currency is backed by the other guy's currencies. So they all go down together, one way or the other. No matter who falls first, they will go down, all of them, at the same time. Slowly but steady, they will all go down because the books are all tied together in one financial system. And one guy keeps the other guy's currency as a reserve. So even though the US dollar is a reserve, it's backed by other currencies, other currencies, and they are tied together. And also there's the thing that is the levels of trade. If you keep your dollar too high, you can compete. So you close your companies. So they are all tied together, and they want to keep certain levels of international trade, because when there is a problem with international trade, the economic history gives you a pattern that when problem with international trade, it gets followed by international wars. That's the same story. International wars, devaluation, trade wars, world wars. That's always the same pattern. So if you keep the thing that's keeping international peace together, there isn't some levels of trade. If you interrupt trade, you get a level of competitiveness in between economies, and that will lead to world war. Most likely will lead to world war. So most likely, I think I agree with you, Oren, is that they are all tied together. If one fall goes down bigly, the entire system goes down, because they all hold levels of debt between each other. And there is an impressive amount of levels of debt that is also in a bubble territory, and they are tied together. So they will all crash eventually this system will eventually may crash because they are all tied together in unsustainable levels. That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
I want to add another point. There's this argument that if you have dollar-denominated debt, then you are unable to ditch the dollar. This is what a certain group of economists are constantly saying. They're constantly arguing. I think it's at the center of their argument. Now, the thing is that if we do have, serious inflation and a surge in the price of commodities, then I think that commodity producing nations have the potential to repay that debt very easily if the commodities which they are producing suddenly are worth a lot more in terms of dollars. So I think the importance that they attribute to that to those levels of debt, I think they are exaggerating.
You know what I am wondering, listening to you guys talk about how all of these different economies are tied together, they're experiencing a huge real estate crash in China right now. And I know China is really positioning itself to kind of be the new currency that's going to be backing their system. And I didn't know that Argentina was so closely tied with the yuan at this point. We also have been experiencing a bit of a commercial real estate crisis here. Some of the big buildings here, buildings that are hundreds of millions of dollars, have lost significant amounts of value. So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out. And China is well positioned to do good in the commodities sector, like you were talking about, Oren. Second biggest producer in silver now. And I really appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts on that. I did want to hear what you guys think about silver moving forward. I had seen a post by a guy who's pretty radical, but I think we all enjoy listening to him talk now and then. His name's Robert Kiyosaki, and he is saying that silver is the best investment today. And this could be for either of you. Would you guys agree with that? Is there any possibility it's literally the best investment someone could make right now?
Well, Kiyosaki came to Argentina. I'm friend of the guy who invited him to Argentina for the first time. He gave a conference. I think it was 2015 or maybe 2010. I don't remember when. He gave a conference at the theater here. He said, buy silver. And the Argentinians will say, what? What silver? Where I could buy silver? Nobody had a clue where to buy silver because where is the local coin shops here? Nobody had a clue about silver. And that silver had a rally all the way to 40. Remember that beautiful rally on May of 2011?
Yes.
Yeah, that was his success. And then silver went down back again. Went back. The thing of silver is that it's like behind all the rest of the assets. They have all the upside, still all that upside potential, and it didn't went. It's still down from the record highs. I started noticing that silver is following certain pattern that is following, at least from the conservative way of forecasting silver, is that you can check the level of mining cost, add a certain level of spread to that, and you will see that in the monthly charts. That's what I discovered 2 years ago. I started following that in the charts. I was clearly giving on my YouTube channel some targets that was for me the next pivot point, using FIBO and some levels, following the monthly charts very easily. So you started to see higher heights in the monthly charts. That's clearly a trend. First it was 19, later it was 14, 24, then 26 level. We are now on the 26 level. So there is long-term trend for silver, and it's thanks to money printing. And that's the main thing that I believe you can get off-grid money buying silver coins. And I did that for Argentina. I worked pretty well. But you have to forget for a long time. So I can consider that I believe that silver is very attractive because one of the commodities that haven't revisited its record heights. Has not revisited its record height.
I will contribute my opinion. Well, I've voiced my opinion several times that silver is a unique commodity. It's unlike any other commodity in this respect that its price has probably, to the best of our knowledge, been suppressed, actively suppressed by governments and central banks for decades. And I believe they've done that through the commercial banks. They've used the commercial banks as their proxies in order to control the price of silver. Now, of course, markets don't like manipulations. Eventually, markets expose manipulations because it's a distortion. It's not something which is normal. And suppression of price, it encourages consumption on one hand and discourages production. So eventually, when you try to suppress the price, you get a shortage. And I believe that we are headed towards such a shortage. Of course, there are above ground depositories, reserves of silver that in the short term are able to meet those annual deficits and prevent that physical shortage or postpone that physical shortage. But once those deposits, those above ground reserves are depleted, then you arrive at a physical shortage. And then all the shenanigans are exposed. And then suddenly you can't pretend as though there's plenty of silver anymore. And add to that the fact that, there are some analysts who believe that in such a case in which the price of silver jumps suddenly, then the public, which holds considerable amounts of silver in the forms of both bullion and also as jewelry, as silverware, will simply sell that back into the market and answer any shortage that you can imagine. I happen to think that this is not the case. I think that the public nowadays has what we call a speculative mindset. It has acquired such a mindset through watching stocks rise so much and cryptocurrencies rise so much. And I think that although certain people will certainly sell their silver into the market once it reaches, for instance, $50 an ounce, there will be plenty of others who don't have any silver who will want to join this market and buy some. So I expect any increase in recycling to be negligible compared to the increase in investment demand. So I think silver has this huge potential. Now, just in the past few days, we've seen a drawdown. We've seen a pullback in the price of silver.
Yes.
Now, we must accept that these kinds of things will happen because so long as the banks still have control over the price of silver, they can slam it down at any point, whether there is justification for that or not. So this is to be expected. But if I think about the long term, the future of the price of silver, I think it's still very bright. I think we should not be discouraged by such pullbacks. I myself, I bought some more. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to catch that dip. I bought a day before the dip. But believe me, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry, even if I paid a bit more. I think it's still a very good investment, even at the current price. I think silver is still very cheap.
I think everyone should take that into consideration. Silver is in great shape. Let me ask you guys. Of course, I think it's going to rebound well. I similar to you, Oren. I don't think that there's going to be a whole bunch of people selling this. When we get to nominal all-time highs, everyone recognizes there's been a lot of inflation. since the 1980s. And I don't think most of the stackers are going to blink an eye as we pass nominal all-time highs. I don't think a bunch of them are going to go off it and sell their stacks. Some people might, out of desperation, be selling here and there, but I think a lot of people are going to be holding out for much higher numbers. I don't know if either of you would be willing to share where you think silver might be at the end of the year or maybe in 2025.
Well, I want to share, I moved to the technical analysis side instead of the fundamental analysis. I've noticed that the price of silver has been steady in a long-term uptrend since October of 2022. That was 2 years ago. And I think silver is following and it's smelling the money printing from the United States. That's my main theory. It's smelling the problems, but USA is printing lots of money, but the problems are higher now after the COVID crisis. The debt, the level of debt, the money printing exploded after the COVID crisis, and I think that silver is picking that in the long-term chart. So I was expecting silver going to at least 26 this year and testing 32 at the key pivot, and then 35, and it's picking the 32 level. And I think we have a temporary high here. I'm not expecting higher highs for gold and silver in the rest of the Q4. I gave a target of 40 for the next year, based on my opinion. If you check the long-term chart, that's completely possible. That's not something out of range. And the next level would be after taking away the level of 35. It's very important because silver is now, for the first time, showing a very solid uptrend in the monthly charts. It's very healthy what silver is doing, even from the technical point of view. So I'm confident with silver because clearly all the setbacks in gold and silver, and it's showing that very important strength, increasing strength in the levels, and that they give us the idea that we are in a bullish trend, for the long-term bullish trend for gold and silver for the next year.
Hey, I'm going to go on a limb here and say that I think that there is a good chance that we're going to see a very quick run to $50 an ounce, even by the end of the year. I think it is completely possible. I think there is very little, if we get above these current levels, above 32, above 33, I think there's very little resistance between 30 and 50. And I think we can get there at the blink of an eye. Now, of course, I can't guarantee that. Nobody knows the future. But the thing is, I do think there will be resistance at the $50 level, and I do expect a retracement from 50 down, perhaps all the way back to $30 an ounce. So we might get this spike, which will frustrate many people. But after that spike, there will be some consolidation. I expect some consolidation and further attempts during the next year, further attempts to break through the $50 level. I do think long-term silver is headed higher, much higher. And I think this $50 level, psychological $50 level, is just a temporary barrier which we will eventually cross.
Well, thanks a lot for giving your projections on silver. I know a lot of people will appreciate that. And then one more thing I just wanted to get your guys' take on was the Federal Trade Commission on X had posted that investing in gold was a scam. This got replied to by a lot of people in the stacking community, and then eventually it got community noted, and then eventually they took it down. It was kind of comical for me, and I just wanted to see if you guys had any comments on that.
Well, I think I mentioned that and I sent that to one of the famous gold guys on X, making a joke to Mike Maloney on my X account. And it was really funny to see that the US government is trying to create some disinfo accidentally or not on their main enemies, on their main monetary enemies or competitors, the US dollar. It reminds me other things as well. So maybe this is a joke or maybe it was a mistake. I don't know. I'm not clear about that. But the governments, where they feel threatened, they will try to create anything to stop the competition. And maybe this is the case. I don't know.
I think this is no coincidence. I think that whenever gold is rising, we're destined to see all sorts of interesting articles and press releases, which will try to discourage the public from owning gold and silver. For instance, on my X account, I just documented, I think yesterday or the day before that, an article on MarketWatch. Now, this is the same financial website which didn't mention gold at all. While it was rising from 2000, 2100, 2000, 2200, while it was rising all the way to 2600, they didn't mention gold almost at all. Only now do they care to discuss the elephant in the room, to mention gold. And how do they do that? By saying that, gold is a bit too rich, too expensive here. It's vulnerable for a drawdown. So they mention precious metals only in a negative sense, and that seems to be, I don't know if it's coordinated from above or it's simply some kind of a mindset which exists on Wall Street, that people have this bias against precious metals. Let me put it this way: the day you will see articles on the financial press celebrating gold and silver, celebrating precious metals, telling you to go and buy some because they're unstoppable, this is the day I will consider selling. At least some.
Well, that is great.
I don't expect that to happen for some years.
Well, that makes sense. It does seem to be that that there was some coordination to try and control the narrative. So I really appreciate your guys' thoughts on that.
If I may add something, I don't know if everyone recalls, but when we started the Silver Squeeze movement, there was a lot of sudden public interest in silver. And it was, when the Wall Street silver community first was first created. And there was this, this event in which the price of silver spiked to, I think, $30 an ounce, very briefly. And there was some interest in the news. And there was an item done on CNBC about silver by a very, very nice correspondent who talked about it, who I think she even showed the Reddit community, Wall Street Silver, on the screen, and she was very positive. But then the other guy on the panel, he ended that article. He asked her, Give me that bar of silver that she held in her hand. Give it to me just for a second. Let me have a look at it." And then he held it and he said to the camera, "Short this." And this is how the article ended. This is how the item ended. He said, "Short this." And everybody was on Reddit, everybody was celebrating. I remember those last two words, and I understood that this was meant to discourage people from holding silver.
That is interesting. Yeah, I had not heard about that.
You can check out you can look it up on YouTube. The clip still exists.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely check it out. Man, what a snake move for them to make. Well, folks, you guys will go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks so much to everyone who watched today. Please don't forget to hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate both of you being here. Oren, as always, it's great to speak with you and get your insights. And Algo, I would like to say it would be great to do this again sometime.
Of course, Brian, thank you very much.
You bet, absolutely. Well, thanks again, guys, and I hope you both have a great day.
Have a great day.